Okay, so you guys are doing all right. We are continuing with Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the small Shulchan Aruch, the shortened Shulchan Aruch. What did we talk about last time? We spoke about proper ways to act before praying, before davening. We don't. Shulchan Aruch, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says you shouldn't eat unless you're weak. And we explained that nowadays our generation is considered very weak. So some would even argue you're obligated to eat, even if you're not so hungry. I don't hold by that. I think it's a lot easier for me not to eat. I think I have a clearer mind when I don't eat. But I have coffee. I love coffee. And I drink it in a styrofoam cup, like I did in yeshiva. I have instant coffee. I'm not a pompous coffee drinker. Although my first job was at a coffee shop, but I was too young to really be interested in drinking coffee. The cool part was I was able to play any music I wanted. So I set the environment. And as we know, a chassid macht asviva. A chassid creates his surrounding, or in maybe like in modern terms, modern vernacular. The party is what you make of it. In other words, you can change the environment, your attitude, the way you view everything, your interaction with people. And this doesn't have much to do with what we're talking about. So continuing with Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, chapter 8, Siman 8. Let's keep going. This is a problem that I run into all the time in our shul. Before praying, it's forbidden to go to a friend to meet him. You can't go out of your way to greet somebody. Unlike we said in the first chapter of Shulchan Aruch that you should be the first to greet someone. Yeah, if you see someone walking down the street, it happens all the time, I'm sure. You're in a hallway, even when you're driving in your car, in your neighborhood. So, I find it to be much more difficult not to acknowledge the other person than it is to acknowledge them. I find it takes a lot more effort to look away and act like I don't see them. Thank God you learn Shulchan Aruch and says, you should do it anyway. You should be the one that does it. It's not people don't like to feel vulnerable. But in Judaism, feeling vulnerable is a very positive thing. It's how you move on to the next, it's how you grow, by feeling vulnerable. So you should go out and greet somebody. However, if it's before davening, then you have a good excuse. You should not go out and meet somebody and say, Shalom Aleichem, before you prayed, or greet him with Shalom, or even say, Safra Mar Tova, as I believe it says here in Safra de Maratov. Okay, I forgot. Shouldn't say good morning. That was Aramaic. Shouldn't say good morning. As it is said, withdraw yourselves from man whose breath is still in his nostrils, because for what is he to be esteemed? In other words, why are you greeting him before you're greeting Hashem? This means, what is the importance that you? I should have just keep reading. This means, what is his importance that you honor him before honoring me? If you meet him by chance, according to the strictness of the laws, it is permissible to say shalom. However, it is proper to alter your usual form of greeting in order to remember that it is forbidden to engage in other matters before praying. So we actually have somebody in our shul, he says, Safra Damara Tov, whenever he sees us in shul in the morning. I usually say, hola amigo, ¿cómo andas? I just say it in Spanish. I really do that. It is even forbidden to begin learning Torah after daybreak. Daybreak meaning dawn. However, if you are accustomed to go to the synagogue and there's no likelihood that the time for prayer will elapse, it's permissible to begin learning. Similarly, in other words, you shouldn't be engaged in things before. You shouldn't be engaged in something that could take you away from praying with the minyan or praying on time, or start throwing off your course of the day. Google notifications. I have a Google Android phone, and they send me, little tidbits in the morning, like, Jeff Bezos lost $1 trillion. I don't know, whatever it is. So it's super annoying. So when I say brachas in the morning, I've actually turned those notifications off. But it used to be a problem because I have a sitter on my phone, and that's when I would say the morning blessings with my sitter on the phone. And then I'd get a text from my wife, and I would get a text from my friend, and I would, Google notifications, and I would be like slowly taken away. And I'd be very interested, and I would click, even though I know I shouldn't be doing it, but then I click on it anyway. And then getting right back into the swing of prayer becomes a little bit more challenging. So that's why there's a kollel. Kollel is a place where people who are married, they go and learn for. The Chabad custom is for a year or 2 years. It's supported by the kollel. So you get married and you go live near a kollel. You might have a kollel in your community. You might not even know about it. You go and you learn there, and they pay you like enough for groceries for like a week. They don't really pay that much money. Some pay pretty well, I guess. Anyway, the Rosh HaKollel, the one who's the head of the kollel in Crown Heights, the main one, he said to all of us, I learned there not when I was married. I learned there actually before I was married. I had a chavrusa there. He was married. He said, don't pray from your phone. But I didn't nod my head yes. So I still kind of do that. But perhaps that's one of the reasons why. It is even forbidden to begin learning Torah after daybreak. Okay. Similarly, one who studies with others, and if they do not study now, they will not study later. It is permissible to study with them because the collective merit of a group is very great. This is from this week's Parsha. V'roiv am hadras melech. Hashem is glorified in groups. So, and I remember learning, it says in Svarim, it says in books, holy books, that when you learn something in one area of Torah and then you find it in another area of Torah, it means you learned lishma, for the sake of learning Torah, which is the highest form of learning Torah. The Shema, meaning for his name, in order to connect to God. That's it. So we're doing good, guys. They must take care, however, not to overlook the time for prayer. I actually have a chavrusa in the morning. Actually, a chabura. A chabura is a group. There's 3 of us, Rabbi Schneer, another guy, Traeger, Benjamin Traeger, and myself. We learn Chassidus every morning. Okay. Siman Tes. Oh, so we are constantly we're constantly being stopped short in the middle of our whatever. We're supposed to start at 6:30. The minyan starts at 7. 7:05. The rabbi's coming in. Guys, we need you for the minyan. Please come. He always tells us to stop learning. I guess maybe we're not doing what we should be doing, but we do it anyway. All right, Siman Tes, the 9th chapter. The mitzvah of Tzittis is very great, for according to the scriptures, all the mitzvahs depend on it, as it is said, and you will look upon it, and you will remember all the mitzvahs of Hashem. Is that last week's version? I forget when mitzvahs were. I think Tzittis was last week's version. Was it say Shneimar Orisem Oisem Eschartim is called mitzvahs Hashem? I actually ripped my Tzittis 2 days ago. Like this part literally just came off. This is like a 8-year-old pair of tzitzis. I don't know how I found it, but I did. But I'm waiting for Rosh Hashanah, because on Rosh Hashanah you should wear a new garment. You should wear a new garment for Rosh Hashanah, and my new garment will be my tzitzis. I have to remember to go buy new tzitzis. Okay. And you will look upon it, and you will remember all the mitzvahs. In other words, you got to don tzitzis in the morning. Put on tzitzis in the morning. The numerical value of the word tzittis equals 600. And the 8 fringes and 5 knots make a total of 613. Okay, I actually remember learning this in yeshiva like 20 years ago. And Rabbi Vichnin, who was the head of the yeshiva, was teaching us these laws. And he took out his tzitzis at this point in time. And I remember he had a tough time taking out his tzitzis. They were, I just remember that. I was like, wow, tzitzis were like tucked into his pants. According to Kabbalah, you should have your tzitzis tucked into your pants. Anyway, he took out his tzitzis, I remember, and he showed us. Because not that we didn't have tzitzis, I don't know, we all had tzitzis on, but whatever. Chabad, these are you see these little knots and these little strands over here and knots. Okay, so the numerical value is 613. And if you add up all these strands and all these knots, you'll get to another 13. The numerical value of tzitzis is 600. And if you add up from each of these four corners, all the number of knots and strands, it'll be 13. You'll have 13 of them. And Chabad has this little interesting design over here, which we follow according to the Arizal. We have more Kabbalistic, the way they're connected, has some sort of Kabbalistic significance, which I do not know. I think I learned at one point, but I don't remember anymore. You will look upon it and you will remember all the mitzvahs. The numerical value, why will you remember all the mitzvahs if you look at your tzittis? Because the numerical value of the word tzittis is 600, and the 8 fringes and the 5 knots make a total of 613. Therefore, every Jew, every Jewish man, should endeavor to have a talis katan, I think it's going to say, should have a talis katan, which he should wear the entire day. Why is that novel? Because you're only required to wear tzittis if you wear a 4-cornered garment, like a poncho. We don't wear that anymore. So this is the Shulchan Aruch. You should go and purchase for yourself a 4-cornered garment. 4-cornered garment and put tzitzis on them so you can fill the mitzvah of wearing tzitzis. You should wear them the entire day. It should be made of white sheep's wool, measuring 3/4 of an amma. And there's a minimum size. I apologize, everyone. And a half amma in width. Others maintain that it should be an amma by an amma. Whatever. It's got to be a minimum. It's got to be a minimum size. Those who make the talis katan, sewing its sides together, making it like a shirt, should take care that both sides of the garment are left open. So it's 4-cornered, a poncho, i.e., the greater part of the visible sides are left open. Even hooks may not be used to join the open parts. Yeah, you got to make sure it remains a 4-cornered garment. 1, 2, and 3, 4. Similarly, all mitzvahs should be performed with as much splendor as possible, as it is said, Zeh Keli Vanvehu, this is my God, and I will glorify him. That's what we read in the Shira. That is from the song of the song by the Red Sea, the Sea of Reeds that we sang. It's called the Shira, the song that we sang by the Egyptians were chasing after us. Oh, actually, after they already died, after they were already killed. And we learn from this to be adorned. Be adorned before him with mitzvahs. How do you glorify him? You glorify him through your mitzvahs. You should have your mitzvahs should be done in the most splendid and beautiful way. You should take care to purchase tzitzis from a trustworthy person to make sure that they were spun and twisted specifically the purpose of tzitzis and according to the prescribed laws. The tzitzis should also be adequately long. You'll find some people have very long. This actual part is very long. I'm not sure if it's going to get into it, but you'll see that they're spun, whatever. There are different lengths. I'm sure we'll get into it. According to Kabbalah, according to the Torah, you only have to wear them during the day because it says you should look upon them. And whenever the Torah says something like that, you should look upon them, means when you're only able to look upon them. And when are you only able to look upon them? Before electricity, during the daytime. But according to Kabbalah, you should wear them at night and even when you're asleep. And you should wear the same tzitzis that you wore during the day at night. You can change them in the morning if you have 2 pairs of tzitzis or multiple pairs of tzitzis. Should be made out of wool, sheep's wool, but they can be made out of cotton, as we'll probably say. In fact, there are Hasidim in, if you go to upstate New York, you see a lot of Hasidim. And there is a group of Hasidim that wear tzitzis made of wool, specifically in the summer. They specifically put on cotton tzitzis in the summer. If only a linen garment is available in which it is prohibited to tie tzitzis of wool because of the prohibition of shatnez. That was last week's parsha. You're not allowed to mix wool and linen. So what happens if that's all you have? According to one opinion, the corners of the garment should be made of leather to which woolen tzitzis can be tied. Others, however, dispute this view and maintain that this should not be done. So you can't mix wool and linen together. So just try to figure out a way where you actually tie the tzitzis. Let's say this is made out of linen, and this is made out of wool, which it is. Just make a little, wherever it's going to actually tie in, just put leather there. So it's actually just being tied onto the leather. So you can sew the leather onto the wool and then put the tzitzis, the strings, onto the leather. Make sure it's only touching the leather. But most say you shouldn't do that. And I've never seen that done. Nowadays, it's not really such an issue because tzittis are easy to find. And you can make them yourself. The Torah writes, make for yourself bound tassels, tzittis, on the four corners of your garment. Among the laws the sages learned from this ta'aseh, that the tzittis should be made. The attaching of the tzittis is the final act, which makes the garment fit for fulfillment of the mitzvah. If, however, after attaching the tzittis, there is something else to be done to complete the mitzvah, then it is valid because the tzittis were not made, but came into being. In other words, you must, when does it actually become tzittis? When you tie the actual tzittis, these strings, it should, at the end, because then the garment becomes a holy garment. Another example of this, that's how it should be made. Another example of this, you have to make, when you're making a sukkah, you have sukkahs coming up. Again, we'll learn some laws of the sukkah. One of the laws of the sukkah is that you cannot put the what makes the sukkah is the schach, the schach, the roof, which has to be made out of either it has to be from disconnected branches. I use bamboo. That has to be the last thing put onto the sukkah because that makes it then into a sukkah. But if you put the roof there before you make the walls, how do you do that? Yeah, you have let's say you have four long poles, and you put the roof on it, and then you put the walls on. Yeah, you make the foundation, and then you put the roof on, and then you make the walls. You can't do that. I'm not allowed to do that. I'll teach you tricks in case that actually happens. You just have to make the sukkah unkosher for a second, which is very easy, and then you make it kosher again. But anyway, so same thing over here. The tzittis have to be the last thing you do for the garment. They call this ta'aseh v'loi min ha'asui. You can't make and not that which came into being by itself. No, okay. Whatever. This is really for those of you who are going to make your own tzittis. You can learn these laws if you want to make your own tzittis. Let's not do that. Okay, this is all the laws of tzittis. Okay, well, there are actually some. Okay, let's do this. There is some sort of, you should know, basically, when does tzittis become unkosher? Obviously, if the tzittis becomes detached from the actual garment, which happened to me, and then it's a real problem because you're not allowed to wear a garment. It's not like I could just walk around. I have to take off the garment right then and there because I can't walk around with a four-cornered garment without tzittis on each corner. So it's a big problem. And I was a little bit nervous that I didn't have any other tzittis. So I was actually going to walk to my neighbor without any tzittis on and see if he had any tzittis for me. But I found some in my drawer. Okay, before putting on the talis, now this is like about a talis gadol. Yeah, the talis you put on in the morning. Before putting on the talis, the tzittis should be checked to their validity. Oh, so what I'm going to say is, as long as two of the strings, as long as all but two of the strings are good, like their normal length, they're not cut it like in half, then it's good. I believe that's the general rule of it. So same thing applies to the talis gadol, the big talis that everybody wears. I just want to tell you, you go into some shuls and they wear that scarf talis. Yeah, we've all seen that, like conservative and reform shuls. Shouldn't wear them. They're I don't know what they do. I don't know why they have them. It's a bit of a problem. Shouldn't wear those talis things, whatever. Might be better not to wear one at all. It's a problem. Before putting on the talis, the tzittis should be checked as to their validity. You must also check the strings that go through the hole, as well as the shumashim. They should be separated. Okay, this is the back of the tzittis. If you see over here, there's two holes over here. One's bigger than the other. There's a piece of silk. The Shulchan Aruch says you should have a piece of silk in the back. By the way, which is the front? Which one? Oh, I didn't show you. Which is the front? Which is the back? The silky part is the back. If you find yourself with the silky part on front and after you prayed, don't worry about it. It's all good. You don't have to go back and pray or do anything else. Okay, they shouldn't be entangled. Okay. Make sure you make a bracha. Okay, the bracha over Tzittis is recited only during the daytime, not at night. It's preferable not to recite the bracha over the Tzittis until the light of day is sufficient to distinguish between blue and white. Yeah, if you had no light, you're just going by the sun. How do you know what time it is to make the bracha over Tzittis? If you can tell the difference between the color blue and the color white. Yeah, in the middle of the night, you can't tell the difference, but at a certain point in the day, you can. If you put on the small talus while it is still night, and did not recite the bracha, or you put on it before your hands were washed, and thus did not recite the bracha, then when reciting the bracha on the large talus, you should have in mind that this bracha should also include the small talus. Oh, so before you're married, Ashkenazim have the custom not to, well, Chabad really, have a custom not to wear a talus until you're married. So you make the bracha of the Tzittis, of the talus katan, the one I keep showing you, you make a bracha on it. When you get married and you start wearing a talus, you just make the bracha on the big talus and you have in mind your small talus. They actually have two separate brachas, unless you're going two separate brachas. Unless you're going to make the talus gadol, the big talus, you're going to put that on, which I do every morning. That bracha includes the second, as it is a more chashuv. It's more important. It's more whatever. It includes. It's more encompassing. So it includes the other. What would normally be the bracha just for the small talus. We find something similar by the we put on tefillin. Yeah, we have one for the head and one for the arm. We just make one blessing. Lahaniach tefillin. Lahaniach tefillin. We don't put it. We don't say a bracha for the second one because we just have in mind for the head one, because we just the first lahaniach tefillin includes whatever bracha we would normally say just for the head tefillin. If you interrupted between each tefillin, the arm tefillin and the head tefillin, you make a second blessing, and that second blessing for the head one is al mitzvah tefillin. Just like the bracha for the talus katan is al mitzvah tzittis, al mitzvah tzittis. We'll get to that when we talk more about the tefillin. Okay. If you take off the talus with the intention of putting it on again immediately, and if you did so for the purpose of going to the lavatory, when you return, you put it on again, you do not recite the bracha over the talus. Yeah. Sometimes davening is really long. Yom Kippur. You're gonna have to go to the bathroom at some point. So you just take off your talus with the mind that I'm gonna put it back on. So then you come back and you don't have to make the blessing when you put it back on. If, however, the talus fell off, you didn't have in mind, your talus just fell off while you were praying. You're shuckling like me right now, too hard, and it just flew off. When you put it back on, you will have to make another bracha. And in other words, the general rule is if you take it off without the intention of putting it back on, and then you do want to go ahead and put it back on, you have to make another blessing. Okay. So here it's saying, when you return and put it on again, you do not recite the bracha over the talus, since it is permissible to enter the lavatory with it, even while wearing a talus. Therefore, it's not considered an interruption. So that's why. Because you're able to, why? And if you're going to a place, okay, just use the general rule that I did over here. Okay, we do not put on our talus in the bathroom. Make sure you take it off. However, if your intention was not to put the talus on again immediately, and then you changed your mind and you put it on again, you must recite the bracha over it. If it fell off accidentally, as long as any part of the talus remained on your body, it's okay. But if the whole thing fell off, then you have to say it again. Okay, so here, this is actually a very interesting halacha. I walked into I leave my talus and tefillin in shul basically out in the open. I shouldn't, but I do it anyway. And 2 days ago, or last week, I come in the afternoon prayer for mincha, and I see my talus and tefillin and my gartel are like all over the table. Not where I put it, and not how I put it away. Did I get upset? No, I did not get upset because I knew somebody was using it. They needed to use it and they used it. I didn't know who, but then I soon found out. And this is where this halacha comes into play. The halacha states, one who borrows without the owner's knowledge is considered a thief. It's in Baba Basra. Here we find an exception to this law. You can borrow without the owner's knowledge. When the borrower's purpose is to perform a mitzvah with the object and the owner will not incur any loss, then it is assumed the owner would be pleased and the borrower may make use of the object. What happened was, okay, let's just finish it up. Some go as far as to say that even where the owner explicitly objects, use may be made of his talus. Others, however, maintain that if the owner is known to be one who would usually object, then it is not permitted to use the article without specific permission. That's what it says in the Mishnah Brura. Still others go even further and hold that nowadays everyone is assumed to mind and specific permission must be received. Okay, so it's permissible to borrow someone's talus on an irregular basis, even without his knowledge, and use it for prayers, to recite brachas over it, because it may be assumed that one is pleased that a mitzvah is performed with his property, if it is at no loss to the owner. However, the article may not be removed from the house in which it was placed, because the owner may object to that. Forget it. If the borrower found the talus folded, he should replace it folded. But on Shabbos, he may not fold it, and it may be assumed that since the reason for his not folding it is due to the Shabbos restriction. We don't fold our talus on Shabbos, because why are you folding it? Why are you folding it? You're folding it because you want to use it tomorrow. And we don't prepare for tomorrow. We don't prepare on Sunday. We don't prepare for Sunday on Shabbos. That's why if you go to someone's house, someone on Shabbos, you walk into someone's house Shabbos afternoon, and you see the house is kind of a mess, like the plates are still there from the night before, and It's because we don't put it away. Why are you putting it away? Well, you can't really clean it. Okay, you actually could. But if it happens, especially if it happens and you see it out, the person's probably being strict and not that they're being lazy, they're just being strict and not putting everything away. Okay, the truth is you could put away your plates and everything like that, because as long as it bothers you to have them out, which I think is most people. But I know people that it doesn't bother, and then therefore they don't put it away. One who borrows a talus from another only for the purpose of going up to read the Torah, there's a halakhic question if the bracha is recited. If you're just borrowing a talus for like a moment, the question is, do you make a bracha on it? Therefore, you should specifically intend not to acquire the talus. Thereby, according to all opinions, you are not required to recite a bracha. However, on the congregation's talus, even if you take it only for going to the Torah, you are required to say a bracha because it is considered as if it was yours. Now, two things over here. We'll end with this. The person I knew, one of the rabbis came up to me and said, I borrowed the talus and tefillin for somebody else. So I was very happy with that, because somebody else who normally wouldn't put on tefillin used my tefillin. And that's fantastic. Saturday night is slichas. We start saying slichas if you're Ashkenazim. Slichot, whatever, I don't know what it's called in English. Slichot is like, we're getting super prepared for Rosh Hashanah. Slicha means forgiveness. Okay, so we have certain forgiveness, a whole book of forgiveness. But it starts Saturday night, 1 a.m. 1 a.m. if you live out, or 1:30 if you live here in Detroit, Michigan. And you wear the chazan wears a talus, but it's 1 a.m. It's the middle of the night. We just learned you can't make a bracha on the talus. So what does he do? He borrows a talus from somebody else, not from the congregation, not like the shul's talus. Nobody else wears a talus, only the chazan. And the chazan, the other one leading the service, and the chazan borrows from somebody, and he puts it on, and you don't make a bracha. You don't make a bracha on somebody else's talus, especially if you're not acquiring it. You're not taking it to be your own. So you don't, you'll see him wearing a talus, which is pretty cool. Maybe we'll have one more halacha, see what this is. Okay, wool, say there. Question of whether it's the wool or silk. Okay. Okay, we'll continue with these halachas at a different time. Anybody have any questions? Wow, a lot of people coming on. Okay, so for you ladies, I apologize. This is not so negaya to you. Why don't women wear it? Because it's a mitzvah, shazman grama. Mitzvahs that are time bound. Women are not obligated in them, and the women took upon themselves collectively. Both Ashkenazi and Sephardim women took upon themselves to not do mitzvahs that are, even though they can do mitzvahs that are time bound, they took it upon themselves as a custom not to do it. Women don't need to do it because they're rooted in, like we explained earlier, in Bina. But if they have a natural affinity towards spiritual matters. That's a deeper pshat. Obviously, the regular pshat is that they're the mainstay of the home. And then they're involved in matters of the home. But what is the home according to Kabbalah? A home is something which surrounds you, right? It's greater than, it doesn't get into specifics. The home is an environment. It surrounds you. And women come from that, what's Seiviv Kalalmin, which is a higher level, a higher revelation of godliness. So since they come from that level, they don't need to get into specifics. They don't need to be involved in specific mitzvahs. Those are involved to men. Men, they have to work harder on our spirituality. And we come from a lower level. So women don't wear tzittis collectively. You shouldn't, even though you could. And you might see women that do, and I think they do it for a statement. And Rashi's daughters did wear tefillin, but that's not a lesson for all of us to do. We don't do that. So we'll finish up with tzittis next time. So any time-bound mitzvah, because tzittis are only the mitzvah, the halacha, the mitzvah is only for the daytime. I just explained, according to Kabbalah, you should wear it at all times, but that's not the halacha. That's not the law. Because it says you shall look upon them and remember all of the mitzvahs. Women don't need to do that. They just remember it better than we do. We'll continue with tzittis. We'll finish up with tzittis. It's not so many. It's like a couple more halachas. And then we'll move on. Anybody have any questions? Okay, I believe you. All right, tonight there is no class. There's no class tonight. We have a shul event. There's no class tonight. We'll have to make it up some other time, and I'll see you tomorrow in Mirz Hashem. Oh, no, I won't. We have other people teaching. Okay, see you guys.